What if everything goes wrong? What if you're betrayed by the ones you trust the most? What if you lose everything? Do you think you'll still keep on believing? Will your dreams still live? This is the story of one man who, despite losing everything he loved, never stopped dreaming. Let me tell you his story. We all crave love. We all seek acceptance. And for most of us, the family is where this journey begins. You are born into a system of love and care. At least that's what should happen. For Joseph, that wasn't the case. His father Jacob loved him more than any of his sons. It says in the Bible that Jacob showed more favor to Joseph than he did to any of his other sons. He made him a beautiful, colorful coat. It was a symbol of love, but in a strange way, it also caused division in the family. His brothers hated him. They couldn't stand him. Why? Because their father loved him more. So they started plotting against him. Joseph was different. He dreamed big. He had big plans. He dreamed about the future. But his brothers wanted him silenced. They said things like, "Are you really going to make us bow down to you?" Their jealousy grew. Then came the day they were waiting for. When Joseph was alone, far away from home, they tore off his fancy coat and threw him into a pit. There was no water, no way out, no hope. It was an empty pit in the middle of the desert. It was total darkness. I can imagine how scared and confused he was. He cried out for help, but no one answered. This isn't the end of the story, though. I know you're probably thinking, oh, that's sad. That's tragic. How horrible. But this is just the beginning. This is chapter 1. There's a lot more to this story. Stick around and listen closely, because there's a very important lesson for all of us in here. Joseph's story shows us that after the promise comes the desert. But if we keep our eyes open, we can see that God never leaves our side. His brothers left him there to die, but soon they realized that they couldn't bear the guilt. They thought, if anyone finds him, they might think we killed him. So they sold him to some passing traders who took him all the way to Egypt, and they gave him to a man named Potiphar, who was a police captain. Joseph had no choice but to work as a slave in his house. But again, he didn't give up. He continued to do his best, and his master noticed his dedication. So he put him in charge of his entire household. Potiphar trusted him completely. His life seemed to be going well, but then suddenly everything went wrong again. One day, Potiphar's wife tried to seduce Joseph. She wanted him to sleep with her, but Joseph refused. He didn't want to do anything that would be wrong in the eyes of God. The woman was furious, and to get back at him, she accused him of trying to force himself on her. His master believed her and immediately threw Joseph into prison. He didn't believe him. Didn't give him a chance to explain. He just threw him in jail. There was no trial, no evidence, nothing. Just a false accusation, and Joseph paid the price. Many times when we face injustice, we wonder why. Why would this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? But Joseph didn't ask these questions. Instead, he focused on the only thing he could control, his reaction. He could choose bitterness, or he could choose faithfulness. And Joseph chose faithfulness. In prison, Joseph encountered 2 prisoners. They had both done wrong and ended up in jail. But Joseph encouraged them to remember God, even though they didn't know it yet. Soon after, their terms were up, and they were set free. But Joseph was still locked up, still innocent, still hoping. 2 years passed, and one of the former prisoners became the king's cupbearer. He remembered Joseph and finally told the king about him. The king heard their conversation, and that same night, he had a dream. It was a troubling dream, scary and dark. Couldn't understand it. So the next morning, he called for the wisest men in the land, the smartest and most respected people. But none of them could explain the dream. He was desperate. If no one could tell him what the dream meant, he would continue to worry. He needed answers. Then someone remembered Joseph. The cupbearer reminded the king, "I remember a prisoner who was in jail with me, a man who could explain dreams." So the king summoned Joseph from prison, gave him the dream, and asked him to interpret it. Pharaoh's dream had 2 parts. First, 7 fat cows came up out of the river. They were healthy and happy. Then 7 skinny cows came along and devoured the fat ones. Next, 7 healthy grains appeared, full and ripe. Then 7 withered grains came along and chased the healthy ones away. Finally, Joseph understood. These weren't just random dreams. Each detail had a deeper meaning. He told the king, "God has shown you what will happen throughout the land of Egypt. 7 years of plenty will be followed by 7 years of famine, and there will be such a severe shortage of grain that people will die from hunger. Hearing this, the king was deeply troubled. He couldn't just ignore what Joseph had said. He knew it was true. But he was worried about how he would deal with such a massive challenge. So Pharaoh asked Joseph, "Can you figure out a solution to this problem?" Joseph replied, "Appoint officials throughout the land of Egypt to collect 1/7 of everything produced in Egypt during these 7 years of plenty. Store the grain, food, and livestock under the control of the appointed officials. They should keep the stored grain and livestock in the cities, and the food should be sealed and kept. I suggest doing this so that the Egyptians can use it as a reserve for many years." Pharaoh liked Joseph's idea and put him in charge of making sure everything went according to plan. And just as Joseph had predicted, 7 years of abundance were followed by 7 years of terrible famine. The whole world suffered. People everywhere faced hunger and despair. But Egypt had prepared. Because of Joseph's plans, they had enough food to last through the difficult times. After the famine, Joseph continued to serve the king faithfully. Over time, he became the second most powerful man in Egypt. Sometime later, Joseph's brothers came to Egypt. They were now adults. They had their own families, and they were looking for food because the famine had affected them too. Joseph didn't reveal his identity to them. Instead, he tested them to see if they had changed. He wanted to know if they were as kind and compassionate as he was. They met. Joseph ordered his servants to put them in prison. He said, "I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It was I who made you forget your brother Joseph, and Pharaoh has made me lord of all Egypt. Now come close, please, and I will tell you everything that happened." His brothers were terrified. They couldn't believe that all those years ago they had sold him into slavery. And now he was one of the most powerful men in Egypt. But Joseph wasn't there to punish them. He was there to forgive them. He told them, "You intended to harm me, but God turned it into good, because God's dreams never die, even when everything seems to go wrong." His story is proof that no matter what happens, no matter how much we suffer, God's purpose remains. It may seem like your dreams are dying, but actually God is just changing your dreams into something greater. Sometimes the paths we walk are filled with many challenges. Many times we feel betrayed, misunderstood, and like the world doesn't care about us. But we must always remember that our circumstances don't define us. Our dreams aren't dead. They're simply waiting for the perfect moment to come to life. Joseph's life teaches us this. He showed us that it's okay to cry when bad things happen. It's okay to feel sadness and grief. But we must also learn to stand up, dust ourselves off, and continue moving forward. And most importantly, we must never stop believing in our dreams.